Welcome to episode number 4 of my coding vlog and reel with Ryan, where I go from being a complete noob knowing almost no code to being a full stack web developer. In this episode, lots of exciting progress is made, and I'm just going to jump right into the start of it. So here we are, and this is some code and how I've been learning how to, with VS Code, use HTML, JavaScript, and CSS to create web pages. And in this particular lesson, we've learned to use APIs and JSON to go and pull information off of the internet and bring it into the code or a web page. And I'll show you that. So here's the HTML, really basic, just the bare bones. Here's some CSS, which is the styling, but the meat of the code here is going to be the JavaScript. And what this is doing is using a loading event listener and fetching this web page and fetching the information on the web page. I'll show you in a minute. And then what we're doing is taking that information, we're sorting it and kind of parsing it, as you might say. And we're creating a loop that then inserts HTML into the web page and creates different divisions and stylizes it. And I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. So this is very hard to see, and I'm not going to explain it a ton, but this is the web page with data that we're pulling from, just a web page provided. And so it's got all this just kind of raw data, and using the code, I pulled it, and we're able to sort it and send it into this web page. And so it's a bunch of astronauts. It includes pictures and their names and a quick profile of them. So it's nothing like crazy still, but we were able to use code on my machine to pull in information using JSON and fetch, and then parse it, do stuff with it, and make a web page out of it. So super awesome lesson. Really excited to have been able to do that and can't wait to use more APIs in the future. Okay, so here's a quick little clip. We've been learning a lot of things in our code class, and one thing that we started to learn recently is TypeScript. And so this is it's a very similar language to JavaScript and very related to JavaScript, and TypeScript actually can be translated into JavaScript, but it's definitely a more, I can't think of the word, more defined language. So you have to, whenever you're declaring variables, so up here, actually you can't really see. So whenever you're declaring variables, this is hard to see, but you have to tell TypeScript the type of variable. So whether it's a number, a string, an array, etc. And so we are learning some TypeScript and using that, and that is going to be because we're about to learn Angular, which I'm not really sure is yet and don't know much about it, but we're about to use Angular. So we've learned how to use some TypeScript briefly, and I wanted to update you there. So another thing that we are doing is my next assignment, and I'll show you that right now. So here we have what a form looks like, and it's another just assignment through LaunchCode where we're supposed to be, kind of building out a page, but this is more about implementing validation and other stuff with JavaScript. So we were given this page and the HTML kind of with that. So this is the HTML that makes this page. And it has these different things, the pilot, copilot, and different things to input in. A little bit hard to see. And what we're supposed to do is using JavaScript, so here, to verify what is going in there. So I've written all this JavaScript from scratch. So all this JavaScript is what I've written. And what this is doing is verifying whether those fields have been filled out yet. So it's grabbing the HTML over here, and it's saying, if those fields are empty, then what it does is it pushes an error message into an alert, and then it prevents the form from submitting. So kind of wrote those out, and so you can see if I maybe it's a little bit harder. Oh, there we are. So you can see if I'm typing this in, I can do this, and let's just put a few numbers here. So I'm going to leave cargo mass blank, and if I hit submit, it comes up with an alert that says, it's hard to see, but it says you didn't enter a cargo mass. And so then I can enter it in. Let's say I delete that one, that's Copilot name. I click submit. Now it says you didn't enter a Copilot name, or if I do both of these blanks, you didn't enter a pilot name or a Copilot name. But if I fill them out, then it allows it to submit. So built out that validation, going to be working on putting more things into this form so it becomes more active and more responsive. But that's the assignment, so really cool stuff so far. Okay, we have some exciting stuff going on. I just finished my new assignment, and let me pull over this page. So this is what we coded. The last clip, obviously none of this was up here. So what I did was pull that in from using a JSON. And anyways, it will randomly fulfill this page, and so each time you load it or submit, it picks a destination. And it picks, it updates all this stuff to, where you're going. And I did so much JavaScript to come in here and, do some verifications on here to make sure there's enough cargo and fuel level. And let's just type in a few numbers. So it knows you didn't enter a Copilot name, if you're able to see that. Let me zoom in. So it knows you didn't enter a Copilot name. If you, let's say, enter in numbers into the pilot name, it will say, are you sure your pilot name contains a number? And down here, all of this stuff will update. Sorry, it's hard to see. So all of this stuff will update down here. So the fuel level, it'll say, hey, pilot Ryan is ready. Let's call Copilot Craig. You update that. And, it says pilot Ryan's ready or Copilot Craig is ready. But the fuel, there's not enough fuel for the journey, but the cargo mass is low enough, and so the shuttle's not ready for launch. If I were to increase this by a bunch, the fuel level, it would pop up and say, hey, we're ready for liftoff. And that would change that to shuttle's ready and update these. If we increase the cargo to be too much, it will now say the shuttle is not ready for launch. There's too much mass for the shuttle to take off. Just tons of JavaScript going into the back end, validating all of these responses and checking to see if the shuttle is ready by meeting some criteria. And here we go. Here's the code. I'm not going to go super in depth, but I'll talk a little through what's happening here in JavaScript. So like I said, we've got a HTML file that kind of sets everything up, and then some styling already done with CSS, basic styling here. The meat of this is JavaScript. So what we're doing is first, loading up everything and saying, there's an async function, meaning we're going to go fetch some information, which is all that planet data. And so right here, using a try catch method to try going to get that information off of the website using a JSON and uploading that or storing it in data, and then setting all of the HTML in the other file to this data that we fetched, and using a random number so it selects a planet. So here's our random number formula. And then, so now what we're doing is I wanted to add an event listener. So every time that the submit button is clicked on our form, it would go through and pull all of the inputs in. And what it does is, it sets different values. I wrote a function to see if the values entered into the names contains a number. Actually, one of my instructors wrote that, and I modified it a bit. I'm very thankful for them. And now there's a bunch of if statements, and these are just conditionals checking to see, hey, does the pilot name and copilot name contain a number? Is the pilot name empty? Is the copilot name empty? What are the fuel levels? So all of these different things, different verifications for the mass for cargo and fuel level, and there's a lot of verifications that will change the colors of the text, that will create things that are ready for launch and whatnot, and all of this together just makes this simple website that when you enter in things into here, it checks against our validation to see if a thing is ready to launch or not. And so a lot of work actually went into this, and it's still a relatively simple project on the grand scheme of things, but it really does utilize a lot of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and doing some good verification. So that's going to be it for this 4th episode and 4th code vlog. I appreciate you joining along. This is a super exciting episode, even though it might be a little bit shorter. It's another time we just got to combine all the JavaScript, HTML, CSS into one project and make something that is really interactive and cool. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me. And as always, thank you for keeping it real with Ryan.